Hey, what's up guys? Frosty here. I'm going to be bringing back my Hand of the Week YouTube video series for the month of November. Basically, I'm just going to be talking about some interesting hands that I played recently. I'm going to try to find some non-standard stuff to talk about for you guys that I think you'll find interesting. So, if you like the videos, give me a thumbs up, give me a like, let me know, and I'll keep making them in the future. But yeah, for now, I'm going to aim to release one per week for the month of November and go from there. So with that said, we'll just jump right into the first hand here. We got aces, the money makers, under the gun. I've blocked the names of the two villains in the hand. I guess there's a third one that comes along, but the main villain in the hand is going to be the second player, who appears to be a tight regular. I don't really know too much about them. The first player is a recreational, and the player on the button is a reg as well, but like I said, they're going to fold pretty quickly here, and the main person we're going to be concerned about is the cutoff. Also, this hand is fairly straightforward into the river, or it's actually very, very straightforward into the river, and I think the river is where most of the interesting stuff that I want to talk about really happens. But on our way to the river, we're going to start putting the regular on a reasonable hand range, and then we're going to try to narrow it down from there, because it's obviously going to affect our river decisions. So I just open up the Equilab here, and we will try to start off right off the bat by giving him a reasonable hand range at this point in the hand. We're also just going to have to use some general population assumptions, because like I said, I don't have too many reads or stats on this player. They are playing pretty tight, and they haven't raised the flop at all over a small sample, so we can use that a little bit. But I think what we're basically going to be using here is just the fact that we have a pretty dry board, and I don't expect the villain to raise sets even all the time. I think they probably should in this case, because we do have the recreational sandwiched in between us. I think if I had a set here, I would just probably raise and look to get value from Jack X, 6, 7, 9, 10. Even 8x, 5x might not be going anywhere. So I think I would actually fast play my strong hands here, but I think on this board texture, and given that he's playing pretty tight, and just given the fact that a lot of people don't, obviously I think we have to include some really strong hands as well. So so we'll start by giving him pocket fives, pocket eights. The thing about jacks and ace jack is that I think those hands have to be pretty heavily discounted, because I think they're going to 3-bet pre-flop pretty often, just because there's so much value in isolating the recreational player with a hand like pocket jacks or ace jack. There's just so much value in building the pot early, obviously, to try to maximize your value by the river. But we'll give him those hands just because he is playing tight, and just because, given my position under the gun, it would be reasonable for somebody to flat jacks or ace jack, but I do think that those hands have to be discounted quite a bit. So we got all the strong hands. What else can he have? Obviously, he can have some Jack X hands. I don't think he's flatting offsuit combos very often. I mean, I just don't think it would be a very good flat. You don't see it that often among decent regulars. So I'm not going to give him any offsuit combos, but we will give him some suited jacks. We'll give him king jack, queen jack, 10 jack, maybe 9 jack. And then of course he's probably going to have hands like 10-9 suited. 8-9 and 8-7 are probably in there as well, especially with backdoor draws. He might just fold those on the flop, but we'll give him those hands for now. 6-7 suited, certainly not folding. 6-5 suited, again with backdoor flush draws, and might call. What else? It really just depends on how wide he's floating us here. Some people will float obviously wider than others. They might float any kind of backdoor straight, backdoor flush draw, which would be hands like ace 10 suited, king 10 suited, queen 10 suited. Well, queen 10 suited almost definitely, because it has a gut shot. I don't. Maybe 10-8 suited. I'm not too sure. It doesn't really matter a whole lot, because as you're going to see, we're going to narrow it down quite a bit as we get to the turn and the river. But we kind of want to just cover our bases, so we'll give them a pretty wide range at this point at least, and we'll narrow it down as we continue. I'll bring that back up in a sec. So we get just the dream card on the turn in that we have the nuts and we're obviously not afraid of anything anymore. But it is a bit of an action. It might slow our action down a little bit, but that said, especially with the recreational and the player in the hand, I don't think there's going to be much debate over betting again. And we do get called once again by the regular, and then the river breaks off. So I think we can narrow our villain's hand range down quite a bit now on the turn. He's probably folding, or they're probably folding all the one pair backdoor draw type hands, unless he had a jack. So like 6-5, 7 or 7-6 will be in there, but 7-8, 8-9, 8-10. Obviously, if he has spades, those are all going to continue. But I think all the other combos have a pretty easy fold at this point. 9-10 is probably sticking around. King 10's folding, I think, without spades. Queen 10 is going to stick around because it has the double gutter. Ace 10 is probably calling now too. And then we don't really know what he's going to do with a hand like Queen Jack or Jack 10 or Jack 9. I feel like given the situation, given how strong my range is on the turn here, they're probably folds, but it's going to be opponent dependent. Because even if I c-bet the flop with my ace-x just as a bluff, obviously I make top pair on the turn, so I'm not really going to have too many bluffs other than the bluffs that he is also going to be calling with the 9-10, the 6-7, stuff like that. So it's going to be a little opponent dependent, but I'm just going to make the assumption that a hand like Jack 9 is probably going to fold this turn. And obviously he can't have Jack X with a flush draw when the ace of spades comes on the turn. Like his Jack X with the backdoor flush draws are going to be the Jack X of hearts and clubs. So when those don't pick up additional equity, I think they fold quite a bit on the turn. So we'll make him fold those hands. We'll keep like King Jack in there. We'll keep his best bluff catcher in there, and we'll keep Ace 10. Actually, the thing about Ace 10 is kind of interesting because I don't think he actually can't really have Ace 10, because if he's calling with Ace 10 on the flop, it's going to be with the backdoor flush draw, I think, right? Like he's not going to call Ace 10 of diamonds. So when the Ace of spades hits on the turn, he obviously can't have Ace 10 of spades. So if you look at our blockers, he can't have Ace 10 of hearts or clubs either. So unless he actually calls with Ace 10 of diamonds on the flop, which he's not going to, I think, he actually can't have Ace 10. So I think his range, when it gets to the rivers, it looks somewhat like this. Obviously, you know, it's going to be a little bit different depending on who your villain actually is, but I think this is pretty reasonable. So what I really wanted to talk about now is just the fact that I think most people would just go ahead and bet here, and that would be their standard. And I think it's like not a mistake, but I do think that we might miss quite a bit of value by betting here as opposed to check raising, because if you look at what we think our opponent likely has at this point, and if you just think about our hand range, like how strong our hand range is going to look when we bet this river, I just think it's a spot where we're not going to get raised very often, even by some really strong hands, because it's kind of a situation where if we bet this river, our villain's probably going to think we either have a busted draw or we're just not going to call with a hand that's worse than like pocket. I mean, we might call with like ace jack, but if they're sitting there with pocket fives and we're completely uncapped, I don't think we're going to get raised by some hands as strong as pocket fives and pocket eights, because we can easily have jacks or aces or eights ourselves. Again, it's obviously opponent dependent. Some people might just always shove their sets because they think we might always call with ace jack, or we might call with ace king or something like that. But I just think overall a tight player is going to be reluctant to raise a hand as strong as that. And then of course, if you look at all his bluffs, if we bet this river, of course the bluffs can't call and they just fold. And he can actually have a lot more bluffs than the queen 10, the 10-9, and the 7-6, because I did take away those combos with backdoor spades. So if he has a hand like ace 7 of spades, 8-9 of spades, he's going to have all that stuff too. So yeah, I think just my main point though is that we might lose value by betting, because I think people might not raise us here even with some strong hands. But if we check raise, I mean, it does a few really good things, I think, for our ranges and just for getting value in the situation because uh, I mean, if we check here, like we're gonna be in a really hard spot if we have a hand like ace queen, ace 10, like maybe we just bet the flop with ace high with some backdoor flush draws ourselves, and then we actually value bet the turn. But now we're at the river with a hand like ace queen where we're not really sure if we can value bet, but we don't really want to check fold either because he's going to have some busted draws like 9-10. So it does a lot of good things for our range when we balance with some nutted hands here. So if we just check, our opponent can't just auto shove with those missed draws and put us in a really gross spot. So it does that, but I think, the main reason I checked here is just because I think his range is going to look something like this. I'm going to even take out ace jack and jacks because I really think those 3-bet pre-flop, but even if they're in there, it's actually probably more of a reason to check because he might bet with his bluffs, he might not, but he's never going to check back any of these strong hands. Like the only hand he might check back is a jack X type hand, and we don't even know if he calls the turn with this hand. So yeah, I mean, if your opponent's more bluff catchy and likes to call down more, then by all means go ahead and bet. But I think against your usual type player, yeah, they're definitely going to check back Jack X, but they're not going to check back these hands. So they might even shove. Like it's not even really an overbet if we just check and let them shove this range. And even if they bet like a smaller sizing, I think they're going to be compelled to call with these nutted hands or nearly nutted hands because if they're going to bet fold like pocket fives or pocket eights here. We can just exploit that by check raising all our ace x hands or even our jack x hands that get to the river, and obviously it's going to be super profitable for us. So yeah, I mean it's not a crazy play by any means, but I just think that most people would just kind of be on autopilot, maybe get to the river, okay, like let's just bet because we want to get value, obviously. But I think when you look at it, most people's range, you got to remember this was multi-way too. It was 4 ways to the flop, which is not just a single raise heads up pot where ranges are both considerably wider. We were 4 ways to the flop, and I was still c-betting into it, and he was calling. So I really think we're up against a really strong range at this point, or those busted draws. And I really think check raising here is pretty sneaky and is going to work out pretty well. So. Yeah, we do check, and he does choose a small sizing, which is kind of unfortunate for us. Obviously, we would rather him just shove, but yeah, we check raise, and he does call, or they do call anyways, and they do a pocket 8. So, I mean, it's pretty easy to say in hindsight. I mean, it looks pretty easy to say in hindsight. Like he had pocket 8s. Like, I mean, I knew what he had. It makes it easy, but I really do think that. The range that we gave the villain here is pretty reasonable by the time we get to the river, and it seems a little bit ridiculous to narrow him down to a set of 8s or a set of 5s, but I really just think that this is a spot where we almost can do that, where we can put him on a range of a set of 8s or 5s or maybe maybe ace jack, but again I think that 3-bets a lot pre-flop, so 8s, 5s, and then those busted draws. So I think even though it seems kind of, it might seem far-fetched to put somebody on a range that narrow, but I think we can actually do it in a situation like this. So anyways, that's all I got for the first hand, guys. Again, just hit the thumbs up button. Let me know if you like the videos, and I'll keep making them, but regardless, I'll be rolling out a few more throughout the month. All right, guys, that's it. It's been Frosty for Team Online. Take care.